A Las Vegas tax preparer dressed in tactical gear put police lights on his vehicle, displayed a fake FBI badge, and showed up at a client's home demanding his tax preparation fee. And somehow, this is not even the craziest part of this case.
The tax guru got me thinking bigger now.
I'm Tyrone Taylor, enrolled agent, and this is case file 021. Tax preparer pretends to be an FBI agent, then investigators uncover a much bigger fraud. Before I tell you why a tax preparer was pretending to be an FBI agent, you need to understand what was happening inside his tax business. Umoren owned Universal Tax Services in Las Vegas. According to the Department of Justice, from approximately 2012 through 2016, he prepared and filed tax returns for customers that contained false information. That included false deductions and fictitious businesses. Why does that matter? Because deductions reduce taxable income, and a business can create deductions and losses that affect somebody's tax liability. But you can't just invent a business. You can't create deductions that don't exist just because they produce a bigger refund. According to prosecutors, that's what was happening here. The false information was being used to generate refunds larger than what those taxpayers were legally entitled to receive. But here is where this case gets more interesting from a tax professional's perspective. Every paid federal tax return preparer is supposed to have a preparer tax identification number. We call it a PTIN. Think of that PTIN as one of the ways the tax system identifies who prepared the return. According to the Department of Justice, Umoren sometimes used the names and PTINs of employees at Universal Tax Services without their knowledge or permission. So on paper, it could appear that someone else prepared the return. That is an important lesson for tax professionals. Your PTIN is not just some random number you type into a tax software. It identifies you as a paid preparer. You need to protect it. But Umoren's customers had another problem. According to prosecutors, he required customers to use a refund anticipation check program. That type of program can allow tax preparation fees to be deducted from the taxpayer's refund. But DOJ says Umoren sometimes used the system to deduct additional fees without the customers knowing about them. So now we have false information on tax returns, other preparers' identities allegedly being used without their permission, and undisclosed fees coming out of customers' refunds. Then, February 7th, 2016 happened. According to the Department of Justice, Umoren posed as an FBI agent. He wore a fake FBI badge, he wore tactical gear, and he put police lights on his vehicle. And he drove to a client's home. Why? To demand payment of tax preparation fees. Think about that for a second. Your tax preparer comes to your house looking like federal law enforcement because of a tax preparation bill. Umoren later pled guilty to impersonating a federal agent, but the story still wasn't finished, because a few months later, another scheme began. Around May 2016, he started trying to sell Universal Tax Services. And if you're selling a tax business, what makes that business viable? Clients, revenue, profitability. The financial records showing what the business actually produces. But according to prosecutors, Umoren created a false picture of those things. DOJ says potential purchasers were provided fraudulent returns, false personal income tax returns, and tax forms that had never actually been filed with the IRS. The purpose was to make Universal Tax Services appear substantially bigger and more profitable than it really was. But how do you make a tax business look like it has a lot of more clients? This is where approximately 12,000 taxpayers enter the story. According to the DOJ, Umoren obtained personal and tax information belonging to approximately 12,000 people who were not Universal Tax Services customers. The information had been stolen from a company that supplied tax preparation software to firms around the country. A computer support employee at that company, Melvin Arellana, later pled guilty to participating in the conspiracy. And there's an important distinction here. I'm not telling you Umoren filed 12,000 fraudulent tax returns using those identities. That is not what the record says. The The Department of Justice says that stolen taxpayer information was used to inflate Universal Tax Services' apparent customer base. In other words, make the business look bigger. And it worked. In November 2017, Universal Tax Services was sold for approximately $6.7 million. DOJ says Umoren received more than $3.8 million from the transaction. Prosecutors also said proceeds from the sale were later used to purchase assets, including land in Henderson, Nevada, and an automobile. That conduct became part of a money laundering case. So what was started as a fraudulent tax preparation had grown into something much larger. False returns, misused preparer identities, hidden customer fees, federal agent impersonation, stolen taxpayer information, fraudulent business records, a multi-million-dollar business sale, and money laundering. Now, how did investigators build the case? The public record shows multiple federal agencies were involved, including the IRS Criminal Investigations, the Treasury Inspection General for Tax Administration, and the FBI. There is also evidence that the IRS investigation activity was underway by 2017. That year, Umoren filed a federal court action attempting to squash an IRS summons. The court dismissed that petition for lack of jurisdiction. Umoren entered guilty pleas in two related federal cases. On March 28, 2022, he pled guilty in a case involving false tax returns, aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, and impersonating an FBI agent. Then on June 8, 2022, he pled guilty in the second case involving wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering. On November 30, 2022, U.S. District Judge Andrew P. Gordon sentenced him to 13 years and 3 months in federal prison. He also received 3 years of supervised release, and the court ordered $9.6 million in restitution. Be careful with that number. That does not mean he stole $9.6 from the IRS. The restitution arose from losses connected to multiple fraud schemes in this case. Court records also reflect a $4.05 million criminal forfeiture money judgment in one of the related cases. Umoren appealed. In April 2024, the Ninth Court affirmed the case. Now here's my tax guru take. There are two lessons in this case depending on which side of the tax desk you sit on. If you are a taxpayer, understand this. You are signing your tax return. Do not let anybody put a business on your return that you never operated. Do not ignore deductions you don't recognize just because they give you a bigger refund, and make sure you understand what fees are being taken from that refund. A huge refund is not automatically a good refund. A PTIN connects a paid preparer to a return. Taxpayers' information can contain enough personal and financial data to cause enormous damage when it gets into the wrong hands. Your job is not to manufacture the biggest refund. Your job is to prepare an accurate return under the tax law. Because once you start inventing deductions, inventing businesses, hiding fees, or using someone else's identity, you're not doing creative tax planning, you're creating evidence. Follow that tax guru if you like learning how the tax system actually works through real tax crimes. Real tax crimes, real court cases, real lessons. That tax guru tax crime stories.
Mailbox full of pressure, I was losing sleep. Every single week felt deeper than deep. Then I changed the way I moved, changed the way I planned. And stress and the strategy finally took a stand. Now the business looking clean, money coming through. Everybody asking who helped me break through. The tax guru got me thinking big and